For years, I carried that story in my head, and I knew that the secret of everything was there.
Rene Girard died 10 years ago today, and that is a big deal to me. I'm a huge fan of Rene Girard. He was a Catholic intellectual, one of the most brilliant Catholic intellectuals of the 20th century. And I honestly don't know how I would teach Greek tragedy without Rene Girard. I want to share with you a clip from an interview that Rene Girard did, where he said that there's one Bible story that tells the history of all religion. And I'm going to share that with you in his own words. And he's got a great French accent, so he's much more interesting to listen to than me. But before we do that, I wanted to tell you I'm doing this class on Agamemnon, the Greek tragedy Agamemnon, written by Aeschylus, and it's coming up in November. The story of Agamemnon is this Greek hero that comes home from the Trojan War, and his wife, Clytemnestra, who I'm supposed to be dressed up as, kills him. So hence the axe. She murders him when he gets home. So it makes you wonder, what on earth could make a woman want to murder her husband? You can think about that for a second. When Agamemnon went off to the Trojan War, he had gathered thousands and thousands of Greeks in this bay on all these ships, and they were ready to go fight Troy. And they couldn't get the wind to sail. And so the story goes that everybody was getting really restless. All the soldiers were getting really restless. They were running out of food. Something needed to be done. And they were like, why are the gods, not sending us the wind that we need to sail? So the priest or the seer at the time told Agamemnon that if he wanted the wind to sail to Troy, he had to sacrifice his daughter. So they sent a message to Clytemnestra, telling her that it was time for her daughter, Iphigenia, to get married. And she was going to marry Achilles, who was like, the hottest dude in the Greek army. He was a great leader, a great warrior, super handsome. If you've ever seen Troy, I imagine he must have looked something like Brad Pitt. But anyway, so she was really excited. This is her wedding day. Her mother is so excited. They get all her, stuff together, probably went out and bought a dress, made one, and then went to the beach to meet for the wedding. And they show up and she finds out she's not getting married. She's going to die. So that's the story of behind the play Agamemnon. And that is why Clytemnestra is so angry. She's been angry for a long time. She's basically mad with grief and really can't wait to kill him. Like, she's really looking forward to it. Probably doesn't help that Agamemnon also brings home a girlfriend. Yeah, I mean, if it's just not, that's not helping the situation. So Aeschylus wrote in about 450 BC, I think, and there's a Roman poet that I've been reading. When was Lucretius? Lucretius was I think 100 BC or something like that. I wanted to work him into my class this year, so I just picked up his one poem that we have, which is called On the Nature of Things, and I start reading. And I encounter right there in the beginning of the poem the story of Iphigenia. I want to read you a part from the poem. I fear perhaps thou deemest that we fare an impious road to realms of thought profane, but 'tis that same religion, oftener far hath bred the foul impieties of men. As once at Aulis the elected chiefs, foremost of heroes, Danaan counselors, defiled Diana's altar, virgin queen, with Agamemnon's daughter, foully slain. She felt the chaplet round her maiden locks, and fillets fluttering down on either cheek, and at the altar marked her grieving sire, the priests beside him who concealed the knife, and all the folk in tears at sight of her. With a dumb terror and a sinking knee she dropped, nor might avail her now that first 'twas she who gave the king a father's name. They raised her up, they bore the trembling girl, on to the altar hither led not now, with solemn rites and hymeneal choir. But sinless woman, sinfully fordone, a parent felled her on her bridal day, making his child a sacrificial beast, to give the ships auspicious winds for Troy. Such are the crimes to which religion leads. So Lucretius has this sort of super critical look at religion, and he's saying things like, look at what terrible things religion leads people to do. And one of the examples that he's using here is the sacrifice of Iphigenia. So it was interesting to me too then when I saw Lucretius's poem, and I'm like, this Roman writer 400 years later is right in the beginning of his big poem. He's talking about Iphigenia, and he's talking about what religion leads to. And so Rene Girard, I think in this story that I'm going to share with you, that he tells about this Bible story, it kind of ties together Christianity, the pagan religions and the pagan rites, and the Old Testament. It kind of like wraps it all together. And he says that in this Bible story, you can see the history of all religion. It relates to this story of Iphigenia, and I hope you like it.
When Rene Girard first presented his interpretation of the Gospel in his book Things Hidden Since the Foundation of the World, he called it a non-sacrificial reading. A sacrificial reading sees the death of Jesus as required by God in order to cancel the debt we have incurred by our disobedience. A non-sacrificial reading refuses the disturbing idea that God demands the death of his Son, and instead focuses on the cross's power to expose and undo the lie in which humankind had been a prisoner. But as Girard's dialogue with other Christians expanded, he realized that many people were still using the word sacrifice, in its other sense of self-giving, for what he was calling a non-sacrificial interpretation. The solution, he decided, was to abandon his potentially divisive term and instead draw a distinction within the word sacrifice itself, a distinction that he finds illustrated in the biblical story of the judgment of King Solomon, or Salomon in French.
For years, I carried that story in my head, and I knew that the secret of everything was there. Because maybe we sum up the story rapidly. People know the judgment of Solomon, but it's better to say it again. One fine day, 2 prostitutes go to Solomon. And these 2 prostitutes live together in a house all by themselves, and they both have a child at about the same time. One of the children dies during the night, and the 2 prostitutes show up in front of Solomon, and they both say the same thing. They are very good doubles. They both say, my rival, this woman, during the night, her child died because she rolled over him while sleeping. And she took the live child in my bed, and she put the dead child to make it seem as if my child had died. And Solomon repeats, the first woman says this, the second woman says that. What can you do? No way to find the truth. So bring me a sword. I will cut the child in 2. And the first woman reacts saying, yes, fine, let's do that. My rival will not have that child. And the second woman says, give her the child. I want the child to live. I prefer to lose the child. And the life of the child is the most important thing. Therefore, the Middle Ages said that the figure of Christ, the figure of Christ, figura Christi, is the allegorical interpretation in which you're looking for the character who replaces Christ. They said the figure of Christ was Solomon, but that's not true. The figure of Christ is obviously the good prostitute. She prefers to sacrifice all her interest and even herself, because Solomon may believe that she couldn't stand the heat there, and to lose the child so that the child will live. Therefore, she's really profoundly against sacrifice as an instrument of death. And of course, Solomon understands immediately. He's like Joseph with his brothers, you see. So, in Things Hidden, I said, you cannot use the same word for what the first woman wants to do and for what the second woman is doing. Because the separation between the two, there is no difference which is greater than this one. And you use the same word, sacrifice. Isn't that a scandal? Shouldn't they be separated? Is not what the story is about. But now I would say the story is about that separation. But why does the story exist in the first place and brings these two women together? Why are they together there? I think the story tells you the whole history of religion. The continuity, in a way, between the two forms of sacrifice, and how much the second one, how much better, of course, the second one is than the first.
The continuity of sacrifice, from its victimizing form to its self-giving form, leads on into a discussion of Christianity's impact on the world.
So there you have it. The whole history of religion. He said it's the secret to everything. This is only the tip of the iceberg when it comes to studying Aeschylus. At Teach to the Text, students read Aeschylus in around January and February every year in the course Ancient Greek Literature and Intermediate Composition. And this year, I'm offering it in November for adults. So there is a class that starts on November 14th. And if you are interested in reading the play with us, it's not that much reading, and you have 8 days to get through it. And we're going to meet 3 different times. I introduced Rene Girard in my Ancient Greek Literature class, which is perfect for 9th and 10th graders. And then we do a little bit of continuation of Rene Girard in my Ancient Roman Literature class in the follow-up year. There's also a free course available at Teach to the Text on Rene Girard. It's not really a course. There's no tests. There's no study guides. There's no quizzes. It's really just a curated bank of resources. A few videos, interviews with him. And I think the nice thing about doing the course is that there are timestamps on those videos, so you can go back and refer to things that were in the videos, and a couple documentaries and a couple of videos by Bishop Barron. And finally, there's also an ancient Greek literature timeline that you can get at Teach to the Text. So I'll include a link to all of these things below. And if you'd like the timeline, it will help you put Aeschylus in context, in the greater context of ancient Greek literature. And that timeline also includes a list of popular readings. So whether you join me in a class or possibly sign up your student to study with me, or whether you decide to tackle this on your own, I hope this intrigues you and draws you into the incredible poet and poetry of Aeschylus in his verse play Agamemnon, which is a part of the Orestean trilogy. So I hope this was helpful to you, and God bless.